Adequate notice of this January 31st, 2019 meeting has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act by posting written notice and agenda of the meeting on the bulletin board in the Municipal Building, 1000 Route 10, Township of Hanover, and by hand delivering, mailing, or faxing such notice and agenda to the following newspapers: Morris County's Daily Record, Star Ledger, Hanover Eagle, and by filing same with the Township Clerk. Roll call,
on roll call, Committeeman Gallagher.
Here.
Committeeman Faramaska.
Here.
Committeeman Mahalko.
Here.
Committeeman Cahill.
Here.
And Mayor Francioli.
Here.
5 members in attendance, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you all please rise and join me in a pledge of allegiance to our flag? Please remain standing for a prayer afterwards. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. John?
Almighty God, we ask that you bless this governing body with an abundance of wisdom and understanding, so that every deliberation will result in actions which will promote the common good and the general welfare for all of the people of Hanover Township. Amen.
Please be seated. You want to hold? All right. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, please bear with us. I have absent one committeeman for a second here before we begin. Okay. Who's shorting out? Who's that?
This mic.
Is that you? Oh, this isn't me. Hey, Fred. What you doing? You don't look the worse for wear. Okay. You good? You good? All right.
Good.
Fine.
Thanks, Ron.
Very good. All right, gentlemen, at this time, I'd like a motion to open the floor to the public for any item not appearing on the agenda. Motion to open, all approved? Okay.
Aye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the floor is open. If anyone would like to address the Township Committee at this time, there'll be another opening of the committee, the latter part of the meeting. Please do so from the podium and give us your name and address for the record. Floor remains open. Seeing none, hearing none, motion to close.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Administrator.
Okay, with the formal agenda, ladies and gentlemen, on the approval of minutes for the January 10th, 2019 regular meeting, may we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Gallagher, seconded by Mr. Faramaska. All in favor?
Aye.
So approved. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have several ordinances for introduction this evening. Several of the ordinances will be taken as a consent agenda, specifically ordinance numbers 2, 3, and 7 first, and then 5 and 6 later on. But because of the importance of ordinance number 4 to meet requirements under the local budget law of the state of New Jersey, we're going to have a different procedure on ordinance number 4. So at this time, we have ordinances 2, 3, and 7, which may be found on page 1 and 2 of the ordinance. These 3 ordinances will be further considered by the Township Committee at a meeting on February the 14th at 8 p.m. And at that time, ordinance numbers 2, 3, and 7, any member of the public will have an opportunity to be heard concerning those ordinances. The ordinances and the notices of introduction for ordinances 2, 3, and 7 will appear in full in the Daily Record in accordance with law. So on a vote now for consent agenda on ordinance numbers 2, 3, and 7, may we have a motion for introduction of those three ordinances? We have a motion by Mr. Francioli, seconded by Mr. Gallagher. On roll call, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramaska.
Aye.
Mr. Mahalko.
Yes.
Mr. Cahill.
Yes.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
Now on ordinance number 4-2019, ordinance 4-2019 is an important ordinance of the township this evening. It's an ordinance of the Township Committee of the Township of Hanover in the County of Morris and State of New Jersey, authorizing the warranty of the payment of the principal and of interest on not to exceed $4 million aggregate principal amount of county guaranteed loan revenue bonds, Series 2019, the Whippany Firehouse Project, issued by the Morris County Improvement Authority for the purpose of providing additional security thereof and determining certain other matters in connection therewith. This ordinance will be further considered for public hearing and final passage at a meeting of the Township Committee on February 14th at 8 p.m. here in the Municipal Building. And at that time, any person wishing to be heard will be given an opportunity to be heard. There is a warranty notice that is published, will be published in the Daily Record on Monday, February 4th, providing notice to the public concerning the introduction of this ordinance. Copies of ordinance number 4-2019 are available for public inspection without cost in the Office of the Business Administrator, Township Clerk. We'll also note for the record on ordinance number 4-2019 that in accordance with the local bond law, the Township's Chief Municipal Finance Officer has certified a debt statement, a supplemental debt statement, that was submitted to the Division of Local Government Services on the 29th of January, and that debt statement was also filed in my office on the same date. That debt statement is also available for public inspection. So once again, we have read the ordinance title on first reading into the record as required by the local bond law. May we now have a motion for introduction?
Motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Gallagher, seconded by Mr. Cahill. On roll call for introduction, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Ferramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Mahalko.
Yes.
Mr. Cahill.
Yes.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
So introduced unanimously. Once again, copies of this ordinance are available in the Business Administrator Township Clerk's office, and the notice on the introduction of the ordinance will appear in full in the Daily Record on Monday, February the 4th. As we continue now, ladies and gentlemen, we also have on introduction ordinance numbers 5 and 6, which appear on page 2. I'm sorry, ordinance numbers 6 and 7, which appear on, page 5 and 6, definitely. That has a different date for adoption. One deals with the budget, and the second deals with the municipal land use law. And for that reason, the public hearing on ordinance numbers 5 and 6 will be heard on March the 14th at 8 p.m. here in the main meeting room at 8 p.m. And at that time, any person wishing to comment on ordinance number 5 or 6 will be given the opportunity to be heard. So as a consent agenda on the introduction of ordinance 5 and 6, notices of introduction will appear in full in the Morris County Daily Record on February the 6th. So at this time, as a consent agenda on ordinance numbers 5 and 6, may we have a motion on introduction?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Gallagher, seconded by Mr. Francioli. On roll call, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Ferramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Mahalko.
Yes.
Mr. Cahill.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
So introduced. Consent agenda, resolutions as a consent agenda on pages 2 and 3, items A through G. Are there any questions from members of the governing body concerning those resolutions?
All right.
Move they be approved.
Motion.
Have a motion by Mr. Ferramasca. We have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Francioli. On roll call on the consent agenda of resolutions, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Ferramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Mahalko.
Yes.
Mr. Cahill.
Yes.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
So approved. As we continue, ladies and gentlemen, We now move on page 3, raffle applications, item number 8. Are there any questions from members of the governing body concerning item number 8?
Move to be approved.
Okay, seeing none, hearing none, we have a motion for approval on the raffle applications by Mr. Faramasca and Mr. Gallagher. On roll call, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Mahalko.
Yes.
Mr. Cahill.
Yes.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
So approved. Mr. Chairman, members of the Township Committee, that clears the agenda of the Business Administrator, Township Clerk, and I thank you.
Thank you, Joe. You want to take this after this, or you want to take this first?
Yeah, maybe you want to take
Yeah, I
that
think
first.
so. I think, gentlemen, we're just going to make a slight change in the agenda schedule here. Item 10 first, 9 last. At this time, a report for the Township's attorney concerning the status of the Township's affordable housing obligation, and I think our attorney has a presentation for us tonight. Fred?
Okay. Thank you. Where do I take this? In the middle. No, it has a separate. Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the township and its third round affordable housing. And
Fred, you can pull that
Pull the
mic
mic.
out.
pull it out.
Pull the mic out.
Yeah, you can pull it out.
This one here?
No, no.
Pull the whole mic out?
Oh, I
Yeah,
see.
pull that out.
There you
And then
go.
you gotta connect it.
Is that working?
No, you
Yeah.
have to connect it to the wire.
Are you?
Oh.
Oh,
that's pretty good. Thank
There
you,
you go.
Chair.
Now you're on.
All right. I don't want to get anybody's way. I'll stand over here. I wanted to talk tonight at the Township Committee's direction about the third round affordable housing plan. Every town in the state of New Jersey, if they want to control and make their own zoning decisions, has to comply with affordable housing. They have to be compliant. They have to be deemed compliant with affordable housing. And this is called the third round, that affordable housing plans have to be approved. And in this case, it's the courts who are now approving affordable housing plans. You may have heard about COA or the Council of Affordable Housing. That has been essentially disbanded as far as its oversight. And a number of years ago, really in 2013, the Supreme Court said, we're going to take over certifying whether towns are, in fact, compliant with affordable housing. What it means is, if you have the compliant designation, you continue to make your own zoning decisions and you continue to plan for a community the way you want to. If you don't comply and demonstrate that you've provided fair share housing, an affordable housing, it means that someone else, a court, a developer, or a landowner could come forward and tell the township how to make decisions. And they could take property, rezone it, high-density development, high-rises, put them in people's backyards, whatever it may be, but you don't have any say. So many municipalities, almost all in Morris County, are up in Superior Court, and they're trying to determine what their obligation is, and they're trying to come up with ways to satisfy that obligation. If they can't satisfy it, again, they lose that right of zoning. If they can, they have protection, in this case, through 2025. And when you have a community such as Hanover that's very desirable, it's a great place to live, there's development opportunities, and there's been a lot of growth, that comes with a lot of pressures where there's a number of developers who would be interested in actually trying to take away local zoning. You know, there's some towns out in Sussex County, they don't participate in this process because there's no development pressures. So if someone wanted to build, they'd be glad. But in Hanover, it's very important and critical that the township has a compliant plan. So for the third round plan, what's happened is the courts have come up with, the courts hired a special master who computed what they believe the unit obligation is for each town in Morris County. This was computed after a 6-week trial down in Mercer County, going back about a year and a half ago. So the judge commissioned a special master, Richard Redding, to come out and say, okay, what would, if we go to trial, I want everyone to know what my starting point is going to be. And as you can see, here's some of the municipalities in Morris County. These are They haven't gone to trial, but this is what the expert for the judge is saying. Hanover Township, 897 would be the affordable units. East Hanover, 775. Drops down. There's Denville, 848. Roxbury, 841. As you could see, these type of obligations, what it means is, for every one of these units, developers say you have to build almost 5 units to really make up for an affordable unit. So that could mean, under these circumstances, and it's not going to happen here, but it could mean 4,300 residential homes. And if you have 4.5 bedrooms, that's like 20,000 bedrooms when you look at these numbers. They're astonishing. But there's a couple things to keep in mind. For Hanover, you have a history of compliance. So the 897, there's already about 300 units that were already met from prior rounds because of the way the township has evolved. But you also have this obligation that all towns are trying to work with. And in each one of these cases is fair share housing. Fair share housing is named as an intervener in every case by the Supreme Court. And they are, essentially almost one of the gatekeepers to affordable housing. You try to work something out as far as a settlement with fair share housing, but again, their starting point is this housing obligation, and in Hanover's case of 897. So with that in mind, the governing body over the last few years has been trying to determine what's the best way to approach this. And in doing so, here were some of the options, and it may be of small print, so I'll just read it. One is, let's fight the obligation that's been issued by the court, the 897. We think there may be grounds where it could be less. And some other people have taken the position, like fair share housing, they believe the number should be 1,200 units for Hanover Township. So there's a lot at stake, and there's only been one trial on this matter. And as I mentioned to you, it actually didn't come out very well down in Mercer County. And that Mercer County trial, that decision was 250 pages, and that's what the court used to come out with the estimates for Hanover and all the other towns of 897. But one option was to hire experts, which the township did, by the way, and see what could we do to fight that number. The downside is if you fight it and the obligation's higher, then you really have a problem because it's 1,200 units, because that's what fair share housing believes it to be. And if you can't satisfy your obligation, as we've mentioned, if it's 1,200 and you can't satisfy it, then it's fair game. It's going to be a builder's remedy, and the courts will zone Hanover Township. So the strategy that the township put together was review all of the sites for potential settlement with fair share. Let's look at some open space. Let's see if we can find some locations that would be helpful to satisfy this. And as part of that strategy, let's make sure there's no pocket developments, that there's not a neighborhood that's existing where all of a sudden, right behind it, there's going to be 25 homes, 30 homes, traffic considerations. Let's find locations that are suitable, that won't change or interfere with the rest of the community. And in doing that, let's also try to target the bookends of generations that would have the least impact with this type of demand, and that would be the 1- and 2-bedroom homes, because as it's been defined by planners, they're sort of the generation of the seniors who are looking for affordable type housing and the new home starters. So let's try to target that as well. That doesn't mean you can just zone that way. And the township identified 2 properties that they thought they're significant, but they're properties which would not interfere, as I said, with these pocket type of developments or recreate neighborhoods within the community. And one of those was Pine Plaza, and the other one is River Park. So with that, they looked at and were in touch with both of the property owners, because they're both long-standing properties that have been in town and they have development issues. In the case of River Park, it's been vacant since 1982. It was a paper mill. And at the time it was a paper mill, all of the surrounding uses were industrial. That since has changed. It's still vacant, but all the surrounding uses are residential. And in the case of Pine Plaza, it's lost so many tenants that they have about an occupancy rate of about 20%, and it's been termed almost an eyesore as far as the location's concerned. So what the township did was it went to fair share housing, and it said, look, It basically said if we were to come out with a settlement with Pine Plaza and River Park being the prominent pieces to our plan, as opposed to searching all over the town and trying to make numbers and squeeze things in, would you consider reducing our affordable housing obligation? And this doesn't work this way, but we were very fortunate with a lot of the planning and the decisions of the governing body. Fair Share Housing said, and the special master appointed by the court said, if you can resolve those two settlements, as well as bring in, there was an intervener on Airport Road, which really wasn't a significant factor because it's near the airport. It has wetlands, and we don't know really if they're going to go forward or if they're ready to. But if you could bring these projects together, we will reduce your obligation from $897 to $550. That's a big number. That's almost 250 units. And remember, if you have to build 5 for every one, that's an enormous reduction in the township's obligation in a town where it could be built. There are plenty of suitors and plenty of properties, I'm sure you all know, that would say, we can help you. Well, we don't really need that help. So the reduction of the units, 347 units, really jettisoned the township to say, let's try to settle these. Let's try to address long-standing 2 projects and see if we can resolve our affordable housing and address the future planning. So that's what the township has done. The settlement that they've put together is first with respect to Pine Plaza. This is Pine Plaza now, which the only difference is it doesn't look as cold, right? But that's Pine Plaza as it stands today. And going forward, it also has the Midas shop and the restrictions to the development and the lack of the fact that it's been a thriving location. The Economic Development Committee has looked at it and tried for several years to regenerate that site. So the township has reached a settlement with Pine Plaza. It would say, build a project that regenerates the property, right? Rejuvenates it. And at the same time, make the site appealing, a location that you could work, socialize, and live. So that those are things that planners say bring, it makes it a more viable site. So the site itself could hold almost 450 residential units. The township doesn't want that. The township resolved this at a fraction of that at the 150 townhomes, some of which will be 2 bedrooms, some 3, none will be 4 bedrooms, and then 60 affordable units, all restricted, all affordable for seniors only. Hanover Township has one of the highest senior populations, such to the point where Joe Giorgio and myself met with representatives of the JCC, where seniors, they come in and they're living longer, and they're in situations where they need affordable homes, and there's none available. This would place 60 affordable senior units in Hanover on the site of Pine Plaza. So, and also the Midas property, which is contiguous to Pine Plaza, would be part of an effort to redevelop and part of what we would hope to see the future vision of Pine Plaza. And I note, these are settlements, but there's no approvals, there's no application. It's just saying, the township saying, we're willing to make this part of our plan if it were to go forward. The township doesn't have to guarantee to Fair Share Housing that it gets built. It has to say, we're going to give it an opportunity to make it a go. So with that, the benefits of this agreement, if it goes forward now, would be there's no municipal services. There's no trash pickup. There's no road work. They've agreed that that would all be paid for by the developer for the project. So the township does not have that municipal responsibility. If there's other properties adjacent to Pine Plaza that are purchased, because there's others under contract, no additional residential development. The Midas is a property that the township would like to see included in this development. If it's included, it would not, again, be for residential. The back of Pine Plaza, it's adjacent to Legion Place and residential properties. One of the stipulations is no more commercial use on the side of the property that is next to Legion Place. Appropriate spacing and transition and some buffers for the residents of Legion Place as opposed to the industrial and the backs of Pine Plaza. This is, it's very early, but this is one of the commitments that Pine Plaza has made, that if this goes forward, this is what the architecture would look like for Pine Plaza, with green walkways versus what you see now on the site for the townhomes. And again, this is what the fronts would look like over at the Pine Plaza Shopping Center. This is what the other side would look like, potentially with stores. They're not big box stores. They're stores, shops, or supermarket, but that's the other half of the Pine Plaza. That's the shop. You saw the live, and there may be even an office building. So that's what the Pine Plaza aspect does, and what it does for affordable housing, it brings in 60 affordable units for seniors, age-restricted for seniors. And the other significant settlement is River Park. So if a builder's remedy suit went forward, or if, in fact, there was an absolute build-out of the River Park site, it would come to about 2,100 units. That's what they proposed if it were all built out. Now, the property under this settlement, since it's been dormant in 2000, since 1985, it also has approvals, as we speak, for over 400,000 industrial square footage of use. It was going to be for a warehouse facility. That was for many years what River Park wanted to do. That's what the owner has throughout the state, different industrial, light industrial uses. And one of the concerns that the committee's had over the years is truck traffic. What's it going to be like to have 24/7 truck traffic going in on 350,000 square feet of industrial use? There's now a different use contiguous to River Park. There's condominiums, there's residential use. So as part of the settlement, that application and that approval would go away. That would be withdrawn, it would be off the books. The zoning for the property would be removed for the industrial use. And also, something very concerning to the township is the property is bordered by the Whippany River, and near the Oak Ridge condominiums, there is a bank on the Whippany River that's eroding. And one of the things that River Park said that they would do in the settlement is they would acquire that property from the County Parks Commission, they would repair that property and restore it. It's a very big concern from engineering to the residents that are contiguous over at the Oak Ridge condominiums, that needs to be addressed. So the first thing that River Parks agreed to do is to make sure that that issue is addressed to the satisfaction to all state regulations, as well as the dam on the property. So those are long-standing concerns, and that is a very big plus in this resolve. And the site has been part of an environmental cleanup that has been completed at the River Park site, and this is what the prior approvals would have looked like. And if you look here along Eden Lane, those are the five industrial warehouses that were approved back in 2017 for this property. That was part of an original settlement with the township from years ago. Settlements don't last forever. So one or two things are going to happen. They're either going to build this, they're going to wait, and at some point, like I said, these settlements can't last forever. They'll do something different. The township thought now is the time to address what's been a dormant property and address it to the point where it would be part of the community in a manner that would be well received, and not in a way that it would be intrusive to other properties. So as part of the settlement with River Park, and this is a picture of what it looks like, I think just off of Legion Place, there will be no development with respect to this settlement on Legion Place. Because again, the committee talked about the fact we would like to create what's necessary for affordable housing, but we also want to create something that's within the character of the community, and we don't want it up on Legion Place. River Park has plenty of room to have its own section of the community, and it doesn't need to be on Legion Place. So they've agreed it won't be on Legion Place. And that's, again, just some photos of the site of River Park. So the River Park settlement It's a project that will complement the changing community and the character of the neighborhood because it'll have 1 and 2 bedroom homes. It'll have a total of 70 affordable 3-bedroom units on the site. And it's complementary to the area because it's near Barclays and Bear, which are very big employers now in the township. They've made numerous requests for housing opportunities in the township, and it complements the changing area of River Park much more favorably over a warehouse where the township, we've been in court for on and off for 10 years over truck traffic and the concerns on Eden Lane. That would all be put to rest here because that's not what it's going to be about. There would be, as I said, 1 and 2 bedroom rental units, and there would also be the potential of a hotel, a long-term type of hotel on the property. And even in the discussions there, the committee was pleased that there'd be this type of development, but they didn't want it out on Eden Lane to interfere with residents' viewscape of the property or the township. And they agreed that that hotel, if it's built, will be inside the River Park complex and in there with, which will be retail opportunities, about 40 to 70,000 square feet of retail. Near Eden Lane, there may be something of lesser retail, things such as a coffee shop or things like that, so that would be accessible to residents of Eden Lane. So the settlement also says, as I mentioned, no development on Legion Place. The industrial buildings and the approvals of 400,000 square feet would be removed. There would hopefully be some linkage between Pine Plaza and River Park. And the River Park site is not on Route 10. And it's something that the committee has for a long time hoped for, a town-type center, where it would also be for residents of the township to be familiar with. And it will offer that again, where there will be an opportunity to socialize and or live and potentially work. There will be a river walk open to the public. It's okay. And that's something that, the planner was very much in favor of, and River Park understood that that was important to have a river-type walk or public access. So the settlements overall, in summary, there'll be no obligations for any other residential development through 2025 if the township completes formalizing all of these settlements, and this is approved by the court. The township makes its own decision. There was a number of years ago on the south campus of Bear where a developer came in and insisted they wanted to build hundreds of units, and the committee said, we're not interested. At that point, the committee, again, was compliant with fair share affordable housing. They can make those decisions. Those decisions can continue. The township can make those decisions. It's redevelopment of 2 blighted sites that had to be addressed, that the environmental issues needed to be addressed. The Economic Development Committee had worked hard to try to see how it could get addressed, and all of that could be handled. So there'd be no developments of site that would change other aspects or other neighborhoods of the community. You've seen some neighboring communities. They're going through this process. They are going into neighborhoods. They're developing projects. They're developing numerous small projects throughout the community in order to meet their affordable housing obligation. Hanover's really targeted these 2 projects from a redevelopment standpoint to do this. And the town retains its ability to provide for local zoning. So that's the overview as to where the committee is. It's a process. This is just one step. These are not approvals. I want to just make it very clear. The committee is not saying anybody has the right to go out and develop these properties tomorrow. But the committee is saying we're going to give you the tools to do that if you want to do it. And we're going to be here along the way to make sure it's done the right way, because we want to have a commitment that it's done with the right architecture, setback, traffic, access, safety. All of those things would still yet to be determined. But they also believe that we have 2 significant developers who will invest in the community and stay here. In the case of River Park, the discussion was this was for the long term. It's not to develop this and leave. It's to stay here and manage and maintain the property. And in the case of Pine Plaza, It's a change in ownership, and the current ownership had a very difficult time. Just a short footnote, if I may, the Pine Plaza Shopping Center back in 1996 was one of the first tax court cases where the judge said the location of this particular property is a cause for a reduction in its value. Because Pine Plaza, you basically drive past it before you notice it. And a lot of attorneys have used that case, relied upon that case, and it really was accurate because it has struggled ever since that time because of its location. So giving it an opportunity to revitalize itself with this settlement and change the character of it all fits with the fact that the township wants to also have the right to retain its local zoning. So it'll generate ratables for the township. All of the zoning that will result, none of it is any greater than any other zone throughout the township. It's not as if there's been some type of zoning concession that there's going to be the density that exceeds some other, that it's the highest density zoning in the township. It's not for any of these sites. And if the projects are not developed, the township is not obligated to develop these projects. It's only here to provide the opportunities to develop. The township's still compliant if these projects are not built. The settlement gives the opportunity to develop, as I said. It's not an approval. So that's the overview. This is the concept, just a general concept for River Park. I think they're very sensitive about wanting to make sure they formalize what the ultimate product's going to look like. But one of the things that was discussed was, as you could see, a potential access on Eden Lane. There will also be an access from Parsippany Road so that it's not all driven through Eden Lane. And the developer is working with very many of the considerations expressed by the township. And there'll be a process. There'll be a planning process to develop the site. It's estimated that approximately 28 acres won't even be developed in accordance with this settlement on River Park. But it's one that the township hopes the long-standing request for a town center would arrive at the River Park site.
Thank you, Fred.
Mayor, unless the committee has any other questions? Or
what I'm going to do, Fred, is on the closing of your statement, I'm going to open to the public.
Okay.
And give them an opportunity to speak to you or ask questions of you regarding the presentation and for that matter, any other items they'd like to address the committee on. So given that, thank you, Fred. Okay. Motion by the Township Committee to open the meeting.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you just heard a complete presentation by Town Council on the Fair Share Housing agenda. If you'd like to ask questions of this presentation, or if you'd have other questions you'd like to ask of Township Committee, now is the time. So please address us from the podium, giving us your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Deborah Coons at 2701 Whippany Way, Whippany. I know most of you fairly well from all
Debbie,
of the...
I'm sorry, could you put that microphone
Sure.
down closer to you? Thank you.
Is that better, Joe? Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank the committee for that presentation. I did have a lot of questions. I am a resident of Oak Ridge at Hanover. For those of you who don't know me, I was on the board for our condo association for 17 years. I was a first-time home buyer and am through the affordable housing through Morris County, and it did afford me, as a single person just starting out in business, the opportunity to buy a home versus renting and to set myself up for some sort of stability moving forward. I do have questions about these two projects. I know I did call Mr. Giorgio and ask some questions already about, I know that the town, correct me if I'm wrong, but there hasn't been any addition to affordable housing units since 2001?
No, I think the Saddlebrook project, and that was an inclusive, all affordable project. I think that was in 2011, and that was approximately 38 affordable units at the time. I'm just giving estimates, but that was one. Yeah.
Okay. I know that there have been several projects that have been before this committee that have not moved forward for one reason or another. And I do want to know where, I was quite surprised. I spent most of December out of the country. It's my time of the year off. I travel for work, so I'm rarely ever home these days. I'm all across the country and sometimes out of the country. So my first awareness that there was going to be some change to, or some talk of change to the affordable housing units for Oak Ridge was the letter I received that was mailed sometime mid-December with a date that had passed by the time I had opened it, and then when I received the second notice that said that's been put on hold. I do want to know what the status of that decision is. It wasn't addressed in the presentation, and I'd like to know.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about. One of the concerns that the township had, or the ambition was, the affordable units that had a 30-year term, they're about to technically expire before 2025. So what's happened is we have a number of residents who come in and say, so that means I could just sell my property when it expires at market. And the answer is, and this isn't the township that does this, this is the law. The law is that that's not the case. It's a 95-5 unit, which means 95% of any profit, even after the 30 years, goes to the township's Affordable Housing Trust Fund. 5% goes to the homeowner. So the other aspect is that the law provides that the affordable controls, the township has the right to extend, to say we want to keep them going, we want those benefits to continue to those residents who have them. And so it's the township's position, and it's their right under the Affordable Housing Act to extend those controls beyond 30 years. So the township thought it might be a good idea, and I think they still are looking at it, to say maybe we should just provide everybody with an incentive and memorialize this so residents don't call us the week before they're closing and say, oh, I'm going to have this windfall, and we tell them, look, it's the way the law is. It doesn't work that way. But perhaps, and the committee's still going to think about this once everything's in place, is to reach out to each one, because there's 133 or so that could expire, and say, look, why don't we memorialize this now with an agreement? And we can't pay significant dollars, but we can pay to memorialize that some amount of money out of the trust fund to say we'd like you to acknowledge the fact of, and here's the law, that we're going to extend these for 30 years. So that's what I think is the committee's trying to decide, but we put it on hold until we got a plan together to see if it was going to fit. So that's where it is, the best I can explain it to you. But we had a lot of residents start to call the administrator's office saying, so I want a plan for, 3-4 years from now when these expire, and we wanted to make sure we explain that the law doesn't, all of a sudden it doesn't make it a process where they're market sales. They're still, the profit would go to the township, and the township would rather just see the residents stay in their unit than to.
Well, and I think, I appreciate you saying that, because I think there's also considerations that should be heard or addressed. I think there should be a better forum to communicate with homeowners like myself who are in these units now, because I do think that there is another side to the story that should be heard. Okay. And I appreciate what you just said about all of those things. I'm with you on that. But as someone who has served her community for a very long time, you all know this to be true, and it just, the past few years, I've gone dark. My business has just been keeping me everywhere but Hanover. I mean, I gave up the Board of Elections. I was a master poll worker for Hanover Township for more than a decade, running the polls on election days here. I was with Board of Elections for over 25 years, but now my focus has been somewhere else. So this was quite a surprise to me. I just want to explain that this was quite a surprise to me, and I really need to know, I'm not taking my eye off this ball, and I do want to be involved in this process. I'd like to know how I can be helpful as someone who
I would
has...
say that, that's why I think the committee said, well, let's wait, let's step back before. But if I could ask the mayor and the administrator, the governing body, if it'd be okay if maybe myself and Joe Giorgio and our planner meet with you, because we'd like to hear
I know Mr. Branchow very well, yes.
Been involved this long. Yeah. I think we'd rather report back to the committee what, like you said, you may have some concerns, and some of them we can address, and maybe we should vet them out before that decision's made. I'd be willing to do that if Joe, if you and...
Listen, when I gave up my board seat after 17 plus years and said, I've done my share, I'm hanging up my hat, and this came across my desk and I said, okay, maybe I'm not done yet. Okay. So I'm in to help, you know that, you know me. I just think that there are a lot of questions that should be answered first, and before I start rallying the troops in the community or going to some alternative options, I'd really love to meet with the committee, talk with those persons of interest, and let's talk about this before you make a decision. That's all what I'm asking for.
I think it would be helpful, Mayor, if we could do that, and we could reach it. I'm sure Mr. Giorgio, he knows where to find everybody.
Yeah, he knows how to find me.
Why don't you?
He sure does.
Why don't you stay in touch with the administrator? We'll set up a date for such a meeting between the administrator, council, yourself, and if he wants a member of the township committee. And
recently, the Taylor Management Company that's managing Oak Ridge, there's a new property manager, so I'd like to loop them in as well, because they do represent Oak Ridge more officially than I do these days.
That'd be very helpful.
I'd be happy to put that together, work with
But we have
Mr.
5 major
Giorgiano.
condominium developments in town, as you know. So, resolving some of your questions would be something that would benefit all. So I think it would work fine.
Mayor, I'd be happy to help, so let me help with this one, because I know that there are a lot of people just like me who've been paying their mortgage for almost 30 years, and we're getting to the end now, and surprise, you want to change the rules a little bit. And I was like, well, wait a minute, let's talk about this first. So.
Yeah, and it'll give us an opportunity to explain, because I think that's the reaction sometimes we get. But it's, from our perspective, it's also, we're advising you as to what the law is saying. So, but it'll help. That conversation, I think, will help.
No, I think it will help, and I think that there are considerations that should be addressed. Okay. So I appreciate it. All right, thank you very much for your time and attention. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you. Floor remains open if anybody else would like to address the committee at this time. Seeing none, hearing none, motion to close.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. All right, gentlemen, at this time, comments are ours. So I'll start with Committeeman Gallagher.
Thanks, Ron.
Sure.
I just want to begin by thanking the DPW. It's been a crazy winter. Not as much plowing as salting and dealing with ice. But when we first moved to Hanover Township, my wife works in Livingston, and she always said how much she loved getting to Hanover Township because there was always blacktop. So I want to thank Brian Ferran and his men for the great work that they do. A lot of us are going to sleep and we hear the big trucks banging around the corner. We hear the beeping, but it's a beautiful thing because it means they're out there salting, getting ready for when we wake up. So thank you to the DPW again. And pretty soon we'll be talking about getting the fields ready, I hope. But I just want to say that with our drug coalition, New Jersey Coalition for Education and Positive Choices, we've been pretty busy in the winter. And the winter's our target because typically there's not a lot going on for our kids in the winter. And people have told us that there's nothing to do in the winter and kids don't want to do anything. And I said it's because there's not a lot for them to do. So I just want to say we're in week 5 of 10 consecutive Friday nights at Men in Arena. Every week so far we've had about 200 to 250 of our kids. With the parents and with other kids from other towns, we have about 400 people in there every Friday night. So if you times that by 10, it's a lot of people with something to do on a Friday night. So we're very happy. It's a good program. We feature different events every Friday night. The big event is going to be March 1st. it's going to be law enforcement night. A lot of police from a lot of surrounding communities come. They display equipment. All the kids get to try on equipment. And thankfully, again, Hanover Township PD is right in the middle of it. Chief Roddy is a founding member and partner in this coalition. And I really appreciate what you guys do. Thank you. Great influence on our kids. Another thing that we began is with the Wildcat varsity football team. They came in and worked with us. We have a new program where American Martial Arts trained our football team last Sunday. February 10th, new program we tried to pull off last year, but it went on blocks, but here we go. February 10th, 11:30 p.m. at 11:30 a.m. at Retro Fitness, training with HTPD. We have a couple of our young jacked up police that are going to come in and train with our varsity football team, talk about weightlifting principles, training principles, nutrition tips, and respect for the gym and respect for one another, which is a beautiful thing. March 31st, our Wildcats are going to Performance Sports in East Hanover. And also, we have a couple other facilities that work with us that are going to work with them. Two more, Ron. March 15th is a drum master class. We have a professional, famous drummer, local, Joe Bergamini, coming in, and he's going to do not only a great drum demonstration, but explain different ways you can have a good career in music. March 9th, the New Jersey Teen Concert Series. It's going to be a big event for Hanover Township, East Hanover, and Florham Park, right here at Whippity Park. We have young acts, acoustic guitar, singing, rock bands, and we have dance studios that now want to come in and do a set. So I'm extremely proud of these events because of our partnerships, not only with the Township Committee and our different departments, but with the surrounding municipalities. Because our biggest role, we always say, is try to do the best we could on behalf of our children, our most valuable resource, and our kids are busy. And they're doing very good positive events around positive role models. So Ron, I won't say much more than that. I appreciate the support of you guys. And at Law Enforcement Night, I can guarantee you're going to see all of us maybe dressed slightly different, but we'll be there having a good time with the kids. So, and be careful out there in the ice, and hopefully spring will be right around the corner. That's it, Ron. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. And by the way, if you've not heard Committeeman Gallagher play drums yet, and you get the opportunity, you're in for a treat. One of the most talented professional drummers I've seen.
Thank you, Ron. I appreciate that very much.
He's very, very good. Very good. On that note, I'm going to jump around a little bit. Committeeman Cahill.
Thank you, Ron. And I should add, if you haven't heard me play drums before, you're very, very lucky.
I'm with you on that. Or singing.
Right. Any of those above, exactly. So real quick, something that we had an awful lot to talk about during the reorg meeting, and too much to talk about in the limited minutes that we have. So I wanted to get back to this, even though it occurred at the beginning of the year. But I just wanted to share some data around a program that the Hanover Township Police get involved with. It's a grant from the state. It's called Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over, which they did participate in last year. They started on December 7th, and it went through January 1st. I just wanted to share some of the stats because Hanover Township is always a very high performer when you compare them to the rest of the state. So 145 hours of patrols were dedicated using the funds, the grant money from the state, additional hours of patrols, to try to identify and obviously locate people under the influence. But there were also a number of other things that they found during that time. So there were 5 DWI arrests for alcohol, and there was 1 DWI arrest for drugs. But there was also a number of other things, some speeding violations. 10 people were taken off the street because they had suspended driver's license. 19 careless drivings, 4 reckless drivings. In total, over 198 violations. In addition to that, and I think even more important, like I said, it's great that they're out there looking for the drunk drivers, but they also made 5 CDS arrests, possession arrests, so possession of drugs, as well as a distribution arrest as well. So for a short period of time, less than a month, those dollars that we got and we were able to apply and HPD be able to leverage them, I think we really got a bang for our buck for sure. So anyway, that's the stats for the night. Moving on to the firehouse, just a lot of dates this evening, but starting with the fire districts. Fire District 2 and 3 have their annual elections coming up. Both of those are on Saturday, February 16th, from 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. So if you're in District 3 or Cedar Knolls, that'll be at the Cedar Knolls Firehouse. District 2 or Whippany will be at the Whippany Firehouse. We've got in District 3, Cedar Knolls, we've got 2 seats open for 3-year commissioner positions. District 2 has 2 3-year positions as well as a 1-year position because somebody is leaving the commission, taking on a different role in the fire company. So it'll be to complete that 1-year role. So again, that's February 16th from 2 to 9 p.m. Also, Whippany Fire Company, a couple of dates coming up, a little bit out in the future, but I thought I'd mention them. There's a pancake breakfast coming up. It's a fundraiser, March 24th from 8 to noon. That's going to occur at the Rec Center. And then a little further out, when you're all working on the fields and spring is finally here, the 5K now, the Whippany Fire Department 5K is scheduled for Sunday, May 5th. So more details on that as we get closer, of course, but that's going to start just like it did last year at Bee Meadow Park. Hopefully the weather will be a little bit better than last year. That was a wet one. Moving on to the schools, K through 8. They earlier in the month they had their reorganization meeting and they've had some changes. So Steve Ferda, a longtime Board of Ed member, has stepped down from the president's position, and Carol Tognetti, who acted as the vice president for at least the past 2 years, now is the president of the K through 8 school board.
Congratulations.
Sal Azzarello, a longtime Board of Ed member who has served as vice president, he's actually vice president when I was president, has returned to the vice president role. So again, really solid guy, certainly a great choice for there too. And then I just wanted to welcome the newest member to the K through 8 board, and that's Sue Shannon, who we all know from the EDAC committee as well. So she's getting very much involved. Hanover Sewage Authority, the reorganization meeting for them will be February 6th at 7 p.m. here in Town Hall. And then last but not least, I attended on Tuesday night the Landmark Commission. They also had their reorganization meeting. Mike Chuchnik remains as chairman, so that went rather smoothly. And then we basically spent some time talking about the beginnings of the planning that will be necessary for our 300-year anniversary, which is not this year, but in 2020. So they were talking about some of the things that they are going to start planning for in the longer term. And in the shorter term, they're looking at updating their burying yard plan for some grant applications, which we've been through that exercise before. So they just need to identify and drill down exactly what they want to do and see where we can get some matching funds. And that's it. That's my report.
Oh, very good. Very good, Bob. Burying yard, we're very proud of, to say the least, and the fact that it's got historic recognition right now. But it also puts a lot of regulations on it, as you know. I mean, I had mentioned some time ago, it would be nice to have an American flag in the middle of your burying yard. I don't think they had an American flag back in the colonial times, so we can't put an American flag there. But in any event, Michael, Recreation, Committee McBalco.
Recreation. We are always busy at Recreation. And if you've noticed already, DPW has already dropped off clay to the fields.
Yeah.
So they're already moving. Even it's just the end of January, they're already going. We also had the new playground dropped off at Vets Field, mapped it out, and hopefully if the weather breaks, they'll start constructing that and putting that together for us. So that's playground. That's going to go out in between the two fields, out in the open space there. Nice amenity to have while one child is playing, the other one is not getting into trouble. Now they can go on the playground. So yeah, even though it's wintertime, we're still moving over there. Unfortunately, last weekend our trip to Broadway to go see King Kong was canceled due to the state of emergency. The buses wouldn't go, but King Kong was nice enough to allow us on March 3rd to reschedule at no charge. So that was very nice of them. There was a little bit of going back and forth, but they were nice enough to reschedule and honor those tickets. So that trip is back on. Unfortunately, though, if you didn't get your tickets, they're already sold out. We do have a trip coming up to the Paper Mill Playhouse on February 14th. There are still a couple tickets available for that, and that's the ticket, transportation, and dinner at Charlie Brown's in Chatham, all for $85. And that's going to see, the name of the event is My Very Own British Invasion. Should be pretty good. Only a few tickets left, though. Contact Rec, and they'll get you set up. Couple other things going on. Traveling Teens, which is set for February 18th, which is President's Day. That's for 6th graders for that Monday when they're off of school. They take them out to Aquatopia. That event's also sold out, so you missed on that one too. There's always stuff and it goes quick. Registration for the winter session for the children, winter session for children opens up on February 1st, which is tomorrow. Also, just kind of an FYI in case anybody listens, the ski trip for tomorrow has been canceled due to the cold, the extreme cold weather. They have canceled that for tomorrow. It'll probably get rescheduled to February 8th, but keep your ears open for that. Again, not too much, but
No,
got going on. We got always things going on.
Yeah, there's always something going on.
Always something going on.
From young to seniors in this town, there's no reason why you can't enjoy one of the programs that we've got. It's absolutely fantastic the way the Recreation Department is going. So thank you for that, Mike. Very good. Deputy Mayor Baramoska.
Yeah. Engineering. I'm not going to talk about roads tonight. I'm going to talk about off-roads.
Well, I'm going home.
Off-roads. Want to recognize engineering for leading a successful grant application where the Township of Hanover was awarded $194,000 from the county to support what we call the Phase 2 extension of a natural trail that will be surrounding Bee Meadow Pond. It'll be a beautiful amenity to the Bee Meadow complex, and we greatly look forward to its implementation. From a planning standpoint, we need to recognize the efforts of our planner, who really worked diligently along with the Township Committee, our attorney, Mrs. Samro, our business administrator, and the members of the Township Committee to advance what we call a win-win affordable housing plan. Why is it win-win? Number one, it allows us to address the challenges of the court so we can comply with the court-ordered mandate. Number two, importantly, it allows Hanover to advance good planning in two specific areas in our town which have really been blighted for quite a long period of time. Number one, Pine Plaza. It's a chance for rejuvenation. And River Park. River Park goes back to when I came to Hanover Township in the early 80s. It was in need of rejuvenation, and now there's a vision, now there's a plan to bring that forward. So the plans are now in place, and we thank our entire professional group and our planner for helping to facilitate that. The Environmental Commission is working on a major solar energy initiative. They will soon be presenting their RFP proposal to the township for a solar-based integrated electric storage system that would supply the energy needs for this municipal campus. So in the event of the grid being down, the campus would be able to utilize this solar energy system. Lastly, economic development has been very active, and we thank Mr. Cahill for supporting this as well in terms of preparing the final stage, which we call for the launch of our new website. So the new website testing is going on now. So they're going through a lot of the technical specs. They're testing multiple applications to see, does it work on the platform of a smartphone? Does it work on a pad in addition to computers? So we're very excited about that. Look forward to the implementation of that sometime during late February.
John, very good. Very good. I'll just add a few comments, if I might. Hanover Township was represented. I was down in Trenton this morning with the Conference of Mayors, some 75 mayors, and it was a very interesting conference. Mayors meet at the State House in order to discuss various problems that we have. Some are regional problems, some are local problems. But the two fundamental ones that I'd like to talk about tonight very briefly are as follows. First, I want to piggyback something that our council presented in his presentation. And that is unanimously the mayors of this morning in discussions all unanimously agree. Don't let the courts do your zoning. To the man, to the woman who commented on this, they feel the very same way. We all may come away feeling that we did not get the best deal in the world, but in the end, if we let the courts do the zonings for our local governments, we are going to have major problems. And I think on that note, Hanover's done its work, and I think we have a very good potential agreement on fair share housing, Fred, so it's coming along very well. Secondly, major discussion was on education. And most of the towns are concerned, certainly we suburban towns that are not part of the Abbott districts, and those of you who don't know what an Abbott district is, those are the ones that get the fair portion of state aid. Over 70% of your state aid goes to cities and Abbott districts, the Camdens, the Pattersons, the Newarks, the Dovers, etc. We have been recommending to both houses that they retool the aid distribution method, and we're hoping that they'll do this. Another aspect of this that came up that we should be aware of is that there has been a press by Trenton, and anytime you let Trenton get involved with your government, you've got a problem. But there's been a press by Trenton to regionalize school systems on a broader basis. That means you take a town like Hanover or Florham Park, East Hanover, and add another couple of towns to it, and then you have one superintendent, X principals, etc., and you cut down on your overhead cost of operational costs, etc. To the mayors, again, they were very opposed to that type of regionalization. Regionalization works very well. Shared services work extremely well in certain cases, emergency management, etc. Schools, no. People that come to Hanover Township choose Hanover Township for the school systems. They choose it for the quality of the schools and educations that they bring to their kids here. By going regional, school systems dilute that, and we are very concerned that the state may move in that direction. We hope they won't. But we'd like to protect the home rule, and this is one of the first tenets of home rule, is certainly on an educational basis, keeping our school systems under our control here in Hanover, and we certainly are going to be a strong advocate for that. Finally, I'll close on another note that we came to the end of our last year, and we're looking at budgets for 2019. Your town council will be sequestered on Saturday with hot coffee and donuts, and we will be addressing the town's budget for the coming year, 2019. We hope to be very successful with it. It's going to be a little bit of belt tightening this year. We don't have the same growth and rateable base as we had in years past. We put on a lot of very successful corporates this year and last year. MetLife has joined us. You know, Bayer Corporation has been with us, and certainly we're excited about Barclays Bank taking over the large portion that they have. But coming into 2019, it's going to be a little harder look at the numbers, and we'll do that. So having said that, I'm going to end on that note and motion for an adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Committee's adjourned. Thank you. Very good. Good conference this morning.
Hey, Jim, how are you?
This education.
So, Joe, yes, thank you.
And the governor's attorney general.